Hello there. My name's Raider Smith, and I'm just here to brief you on your project. I'm from Australia, and I work for the US government, and we have a major issue happening on the coastlines of the United States, and not just the United States, but most of the world, where we find that sea levels are rising and the coastlands are being affected by many different factors that are causing our water supply and our life biodiversity. So that's the living things, and plants and animals are not surviving like they should in our environment. So our job is to send you this here project. And so what I'm looking for is for some agents who are willing to do some research. And we've actually gathered together a bunch of resources that I'd like to show you. And then your job is going to be to look at these resources and propose our solution. So I could get here on the ground in lots of these coastal regions and talk with governments to make sure that we do our job to protect the environment and to protect the human way of life. So let's get into it here. So here you have a directive. And so I'm going to shrink my little head here so you can see what your directive is, right? Life on the coastlines of the United States and other great nations are at risk. The animal and plant life in these areas are also at risk, not just the lives of citizens and their property. We need to identify the causes for the climate change that is making it difficult for human, plant, and animal life to survive and thrive in today's coastal regions. And again, I'm Agent Raider Smith of the EPA, and I'm just employing you as members of the EPA to help us solve this problem here. So, first and foremost, we have some potential causes of the climate change that we've looked at. And we know that sea levels are rising, that there are situations where we have saltwater intrusion in the water supply for the citizens of the areas along the coast. Of course, there's some water pollution that we'd like to maybe come up with some solutions for, and some issues with freshwater shortage and overpumping of these aquifers of fresh water, which is causing some of our issues. So we want to look into what are the main causes and how can we effectively attack some of these causes to help solve our problems in America's and the rest of the world's coastline, right? So we've also given you some helpful information to help us understand how these coastlines work. And so I'll need to go back here. So give me a second here. There we go. One of those is understanding something called diffusion, which I know many of you may already understand. But diffusion is where we have substances moving from high concentration to low concentration. So when you talk about the ocean and fresh water, you got this thing called salt. And so with salt also comes this concept called salinity. And salinity is basically talking about how much salt do we have in certain areas. And so we want to understand these two things. And then last and not least, we want to understand how we can collect data to help us understand and provide some monitoring of the climate. So once we do find a solution, we can make sure it's staying that way and not continuing to move in the opposite direction. Right. So there are some potential solutions. It's your job to determine which of these solutions is going to be best for our scenario, right? So in some areas, we've already built some seawalls, which are basically structures that help combat against rising sea levels when tides are high, because the level of the sea is already higher on average across the United States, and not just that, but the whole globe, right? The other thing is something called a living shoreline, which is a rather new concept, and it's one that's really interesting, where it talks about even increasing the biodiversity and providing new plant and animal life, which might be effective in not only combating against rising sea levels and saltwater intrusion, but also will increase the biodiversity and the plant and animal life in the area, right? There's two others. One is pumps and just the ability to pump excess groundwater when levels rise out of the ground and into other areas or back into the sea. And then desalinization, which is the ability to take salt water and turn it into fresh water for drinking. And so that would help provide fresh water so we don't overpump our freshwater aquifers. Right. So your job, what is your job? Well, we would like you to do some research, and we would like you to go ahead and type your proposed solution after doing this research here in this document that you have. So you're going to tell us what you believe is the main cause of our issue here, and number two, what is the solution that you think would create a more clean and lively environment. So I'm looking forward to working with you again. My name is Agent Raider Smith, and we'd like to hear what your proposal is so we can save the planet. See you later.